Talk Zone presents the Geek Speak Radio Show with your hosts, Henry. Your top spot for everything entertainment and pop culture, including TV, movies, comics, casting news, and more.
And here we are again. Welcome back to the Geek Speak Radio Show. Here's Henry. So anyway, we talked to Paul Harding. We talked to Kevin Stark. Paul designs and sculpts the action figures. Kevin Stark, he's a curator of the Toy and Action Figure Museum. He displays all the action figures. How about now we go from Oklahoma to Indiana? Who says we don't have transporters? This is a new museum. It's actually a pretty cool looking. It's designed. It has a very, very cool design. I don't know if you guys remember the Super Friends Saturday morning cartoon. It had Superman, Batman, Aquaman, and those two kids, I forget their names, and the dog, Wonder Dog, I think his name was. Remember the Hall of Justice where they lived? This museum is called the Hall of Heroes. This museum is designed and looks exactly like the Hall of Justice.
That's cool.
Yeah, Marvin and Wendy, the producer Dave tells us that he used to watch them too. I guess that's who it was. I can't remember the dog's name. Alan Stewart, he's the curator of the Hall of Heroes Superhero Museum. So let's talk to him. Maybe he knows. How you doing, Alan? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, guys.
So, what was the dog's name? Do you remember on Super Friends?
Well, it was Wonder Dog, and you're talking about the kids in the first season of Super Friends in '73 had Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog, which that just came out on DVD a few months ago. Mm-hmm. But then the later episodes had the Wonder Twins and had Gleek the monkey.
Yeah, that's what I remember. Alan, let's get into the museum. Well, actually, let's get into you first. What were you doing before you opened up the Hall of Heroes?
You know, I actually owned a publishing company, comic book publishing company called Hall of Heroes, and back in the 90s, we were one of the top 5 small press companies in the business. In fact, there are several famous artists that came out of our company. Ethan Van Sciver, who's DC's #1 guy, who did the Green Lantern, Flash Rebirths with Jeff Johns. Ethan, I was his first publisher back when he was about 19, and then Trent Kanuga, who had worked for Marvel for a while. He did Thor, did Ghost Rider. The last 5 years he's done video games. He's one of the artists on the World of Warcraft video game. He started drawing comics for me when he was 15. About a half a dozen of guys that came out of Hall of Heroes have been working for Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image. It was a real training ground for up-and-coming artists back in the day.
What did you read? What did you play with? What toys did you play with? What comics did you read when you were younger?
Boy, you're going back sometime. I'm a child of the 70s. I just turned 40 a few months ago, and I remember, of course, the Super Friends, Spider-Man's Amazing Friends, Dungeons and Dragons. Those cartoons from the 70s and the 80s. Plastic Man, stuff like that came out in the late 70s. I played with the Migos. The 8-inch cloth costume figures, and then about my teen years is when Superpowers and Secret Wars figures came out in the mid 80s.
How did you get the idea to put this collection together and make a museum out of it?
Well, eventually, just over the last 30-some years, I just eventually amassed the largest comic book and superhero memorabilia collection in the world. Back in '95, I was on FX, the collectible show. They came out and did a whole hour show on my collection, which was really cool. If you remember the show, they traveled the country, and then every day they would have an hour show on the largest collection of whatever in the world. And back in '95, they did my collection as the largest comic book and superhero memorabilia collection. What was really cool was out of over 300 episodes that year, we actually won Show of the Year, which was really awesome.
And why in the shape of the Hall of Justice? Was that just your favorite, or why that?
It was my favorite, and it seemed appropriate. Hall of Heroes was, back in the early 90s was a comic book store I owned, and then we started the publishing company, used the name again, and it seemed appropriate for the museum more than anything else that I've ever used the name for. And, Hall of Heroes, Hall of Justice, it just kind of seemed to fit. I planned the museum out for about 5 years before we built the museum 3.5 years ago. And, we looked at designs, and it's like, we've got to have it where it looks like something people are going to recognize. And the Hall of Justice, everybody recognizes. And then, of course, inside, we have a replica of the Batcave from the 60s TV show, complete with the Batpole you can slide down and everything. It's a pretty amazing place.
Do you have a Batmobile in there, too?
Not yet. But we will.
And that's not the only way to get down into the Batcave, is it? Down the pole?
No, it's not. No, we have stairs. Because it's a full 2-story building, just like the Hall of Justice. It's a life-size replica. But it's just amazing. We cover the whole 70-year history of superheroes in comics, toys, film, and animation. We've got over 100 pieces of original art, old Super Friends cells, old Hanna-Barbera cells, the Super Friends, Space Ghost, the Herculoids, all of those old X-Men cells. We've got over 55,000 comic books. We have every comic book from 1958 to present in our library.
Yeah, and by the way, I have the website and the Facebook linked up on geekspeakradioshow.com if you guys want to go in there and check it all out. You can actually have a 360 view of the museum. It's pretty cool. Alan, when you started gathering the exhibits, are any of those from your personal collection? How did you go about getting all the exhibits that are in there?
Well, most of it is. Most of it is my personal collection from the last 30-some years. Some of the other really cool things that we've got. We've got the original costume worn by William Catt on the Greatest American Hero television series from the early 80s. There's only 2 of those that exist. The other one is held by a private collector. So we're the only place you can see one of those costumes on display.
Yeah, even William Catt doesn't have one.
No, he doesn't. No, in fact, we have actually talked to William Catt about the possibility of him coming out for a signing. Again, it's just a very expensive thing to have him out. We've also talked to John Wesley Shipp, who was the Flash in the 1992 CBS Flash series, as well as coming out for a signing. So, yeah, we try to get different celebrities. In fact, we've got a comic show this Saturday from 10 to 4 at the museum where we've got Ben Avery, who's a writer from Marvel Comics. We have Tim the Balloonatic, who's a world-famous balloon artist. He can do any character out of balloons. In fact, and we're going to have the Phantom there in costume, which will actually be me. I'll be the one dressed up as the Phantom. And Tim's doing a 6-foot-tall, life-size Phantom out of balloons.
That's awesome. Is there one toy in the museum that you consider your most valuable?
Boy, there's a couple that are really precious to me because they're so rare and so valuable. One of the things we have is the Mego prototype of the Greatest American Hero. There was a toy that was supposed to come out. It never came out on shelves. It's a box, has the old VW Bug that they rode around in, and has 2 3-inch figures of Greatest American Hero and Bill Maxwell the Detective in box. We have one of those, and the other one is probably what is known as the Holy Grail of superhero toys, which is the Marx Marvel Tin Train that came out in the mid-'60s. Those are very rare. In 30-some years of collecting, I've only seen one other time.
Having had a few myself, lunchboxes were all the rage back then. Do you have any lunchboxes in your collection at the museum?
Yeah, we have several lunchboxes. In fact, a few weeks ago, we just got the Wonder Woman lunchbox from the 1970s, which is really rare. And the reason that's rare is because the Wonder Woman box in '77 was the first lunchbox they did in vinyl. They were still doing everything in metal back in the 70s and into the early 80s. About mid-late 80s, they started switching to vinyl. But Wonder Woman, the vinyl one, came out in '77, so that predated almost by a decade.
If somebody is listening and they just cleaned out their garage and they found a bunch of old toys, lunchboxes, whatever it is, and they don't know what to do with it, would you take a donation?
Yes, we do. In fact, we actually are a non-for-profit organization, and we are always looking for sponsors, donators, because there's 2 big programs that we do with our non-for-profit status. One is I actually have a teaching history degree. I actually go around to local universities, high schools, and I show teachers. We have what is called a Comics in the Classroom program. In fact, I'm working on a textbook right now to show teachers how to use comics and superheroes to teach art, history, English, science, literature, music, any subject you can think of. And my book is set up in multiple chapters. Like one chapter will be how to teach history, another chapter how to teach art, English, literature, science, so on, per subject, complete with lesson plans and everything for the teachers. And I go and do a lot of lectures and show teachers how to use this. So donations go to our Comics in the Classroom programs. The other thing it goes to is our acquisitions and preservation fund. And what we do is, right now, we are trying to be the only organization to obtain and preserve a copy of every single comic book from Action 1, 1938, up to the new stuff this week. We currently have every single superhero comic book from 1958 to the new stuff this week. We get about 35 to 40 new comics every week, and we'd love for DC and Marvel to send us the new stuff, gratis as a non-for-profit tax write-off. That would help us a lot in our way of donations.
These are just on display, and visitors aren't allowed to actually touch them and read them, are they?
Right. That's absolutely correct. Yeah, we have a very large Golden Age section. Some of the things in our Golden Age section is we have a Captain America #1 on display. Very hard book to come by. Most folks have never seen an actual Cap #1. We've got some early Supermans, Batmans. We have like a Batman 15, World War II cover. We have the very rare, the rarest appearance of Uncle Sam in comic books. And a lot of folks are not aware of this rare comic book. It's National Comics #18, has Uncle Sam fighting at Pearl Harbor. But here's the thing that's going to give you goosebumps. This comic book came out the month before Pearl Harbor happened. It was on the shelves as the attack was happening. And it's right there on the cover. Yeah, it's right there on the cover. Uncle Sam on a destroyer fighting at Pearl Harbor, November of 1941, a month before the attack.
Yeah, that is something to look at when you go there. We're talking to Alan Stewart. He's the curator of the Hall of Heroes Superhero Museum in Elkhart, Indiana. What can visitors expect to see on a visit to the Hall of Heroes?
Well, what we do is when we have visitors is we actually do what we call the 70-year history tour of superheroes in comics, toys, film, and animation. When you first come to the museum, we're going to go to our Hollywood section. Our Hollywood section has some of our props, has tons of celebrity autographs. One thing I like to share people was my almost big break in the films. I was actually one of the 5 finalists to be Robin back in the 90s. Batman films. I was a fitness instructor in the Army. I taught martial arts, American fighting styles. I'm short, about 5'6", dark hair, kind of looked the role, could do all my own stunts. That's how I got so far into the audition process, but got cut right in the final 5 because I had no acting background or experience. And then once I kind of tell that story, then we kind of go into the Batcave, where we've got original autographs of Adam West and Burt Ward and Yvonne Craig as Batgirl. We've got the Bat Pole. We've got one of the batarangs used by George Clooney on the set of the 4th Batman movie. Just a ton of different Batman toys and memorabilia in our airbrush cave. Then we kind of go over to the Greatest American Hero section, look at the costume, things like that, and then we kind of go to our Golden Age section, then over to our Silver Age section where people see the first appearance of Justice League in comics, all of our original Silver Age books, the first appearance of the entire Marvel Universe. We have every Marvel comic in our library, and those are the first appearance of Iron Man, Thor, X-Men, Spider-Man, Hulk are all right there in the case for people to see the original copies of.
Back in the Batcave, do you have any props or anything from the Chris Nolan Batmans?
The only thing that I have is actually in our Hollywood section. What we do have is the studio had sent us some things from the kind of the Harvey Dent election button, and one of the election banners. From one of the props. We have a couple of those in our display case in the Hollywood section. Besides
all that, what else can they expect to see in the Hall of Heroes?
We also have a Hanna-Barbera section, which the original animation cells of Space Ghost and Blue Falcon and Dynamite and the Herculoids and Mightor, Birdman, all those classic characters. Then we have an independent section that has like the Phantom, the Green Hornet, Zorro, Lone Ranger, Tarzan, Battle of the Planets, Spawn, characters like that. And then our upstairs is divided in both our Marvel and DC. Half the room's Marvel, the other half is DC. There we have like our Superman section, our Green Lantern, our Super Friends, Wonder Woman, Flash, Legion of Superheroes, X-Men, Spider-Man, Avengers, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, all those individual sections are up on the second story, as well as our 55,000 plus library of comic books are upstairs as well.
We're talking to Alan Stewart of the Hall of Heroes in Elkhart, Indiana. Hall of Heroes. Now, are there any villains in the Hall of Heroes?
We do. We have all the villain stuff on display. Speaking of villains, I'm glad you brought that up because October is Villains Month at Hall of Heroes. Nice. We actually, what we do is we do the tour about the superheroes 11 months out of the year. In October, if you come for the tour, we actually just talk about the villains, but then the other coolest thing we do, this is the coolest special event we do every year, is our Hall of Villains super villain-themed haunted house. The last 3 Friday and Saturday nights in October from 7 to 9:30, the museum is this transformed, all with black lights, all the toys, the artwork, the comics, everything glows in the black lights, and then myself and all the other guys on the board of directors, we dress up as different supervillains. And we did this last year for the first time. It's the first time and only time there's ever been a supervillain or comic book themed haunted house ever done anywhere in the world. And we did this last year as a fundraiser, and people loved it. So we're actually right now getting ready to kick it off again next month. And last year we had the Joker, Scarecrow, Dr. Doom, Dr. Octopus, the Red Skull, Sabretooth. This year we're going to have those same villains as well as Bizarro, Solomon Grundy, Catwoman, the Green Goblin. It's just really cool, and the costumes are pretty well done. In fact, if there's a lot of cosplayers out there, we've got a lot of cosplayers that are volunteering this year because a lot of them get into superhero costumes and roles, and they just thought, hey, it would be great to kind of flip the coin and get into the villain's head for once. And so we've got a lot of volunteers that are really excited about coming out and volunteering their time, putting together their own costumes to be part of this, because it is just so amazing and so much fun.
You mentioned earlier you're going to be dressed up as the Phantom. What villain, if any, are you going to dress up as?
You know, I did two last year. I did Dr. Doom most nights. And the way I've set it up, because I'm actually an ex-comic book writer myself, I set up the story as a comic book story. And the way I've set it up, because we've got a lot of props in the museum. We have a full-size Captain America shield, full-size Green Lantern power batteries that light up and rings, Iron Man's helmet that's all metal, a full replica Thor's hammer, you know, all the cool Factory X things that came out about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We've got all those on display in the individual sections. So what we've done is we've done it as a story where the villains, because it's Halloween, you know, and that's when they were stronger, so they choose every Halloween to attack the Hall of Heroes Superhero Museum, take it over, so they can capture all the superheroes' weapons and use them against the heroes. We've got kryptonite on display inside, so they use that to keep Superman away, because none of them can defeat Superman one-on-one. So what happens is the guests that come through the museum, they're kind of spying for the superheroes, and they need to report back to the superheroes and tell them what villains are inside, when's the best time for them to attack and reclaim the museum back. So we've set it up as an actual comic book story, and people that come out for the haunted house are part of the story.
So very interactive, in other words.
Yes, very much so.
So, Alan, how are you able to get your hands on some of the original props, like, for example, the William Cat costume?
A lot of searching and a lot of money. I actually own a real estate firm, and that's what has really funded the museum over the years. You know, we just got our non-for-profit status back in November, so we're just now able to, this year, be able to accept donations where they're tax deductible. And whether it's, you know, if there's dealers out there that got old Golden Age comics that we need, hey, you know, they can write those off full guide value, because right now they're getting 50% on the dollar selling them. They can donate them to us and get full guide value as a donation. And then people that donate funds to us, of course, go to our Comics in the Classroom, and for us to acquire and fill in gaps that we have in our collection from 1958 to 1938, because we're on eBay almost every day looking for stuff we need.
Is there anything not in the hall that you would consider your holy grail?
You know, most of my Holy Grail stuff I have obtained over the years. You know, I would say there's, you know, a lot of original art. You know, we have over 100 pieces of original art, but there's certain artists that we don't have. You know, like I don't have like an original Captain Marvel Jim Starlin page would be one. And Avengers or Justice League George Perez would be another thing that I would love to have. You know, an Alex Ross original cover from like one of the Justice issues. Things like that. Those are things that we would love to have to display. I mean, we've got a lot of great stuff by a lot of great artists, but there's some of the key artists that we don't have yet.
We're talking to Alan Stewart. He's the curator of the Hall of Heroes Superhero Museum. Before I let you go, Alan, what are the museum's operating hours?
You know, I tell you what, our museum operating hours are pretty much by appointment. You know, we ask people to give us a call, and our number is 574-293-0755. The only reason we do that is because I'm in and out on real estate appointments sometimes, and I hate to have people come out and I'm not there. So it's pretty much by appointment, but usually I'm around most afternoons and on weekends.
Okay, and all of that is on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com. The Facebook page, there's another page on there linked up. Besides the supervillain that's coming up, any other special events coming?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, we've got the comic convention coming up this Saturday, September 18th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We do that twice a year. And usually in the spring we have another comic show, and then in May we have usually our anniversary party where we have Scott Rosema that comes out. He's on our board of directors. He works for Walt Disney, Cartoon Network, Marvel, DC, and Hanna-Barbera. He's worked for everybody over the last 30 years. He comes out and does sketches for people. We usually every couple of months we try to have an event where we have an artist or a writer. If there's any comic book professionals out there that would be interested in coming out for an appearance, please have them give us a call. Any, people that are celebrities that have been, that listen to your show that would want to be, come out for an appearance, we'd love to have them.
Absolutely. Again, it's Alan Stewart, a curator of the Hall of Heroes Superhero Museum. Thanks a lot, Alan, for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, please, hopefully a lot of your listeners will become fans of ours on Facebook, and then they'll get regular updates on all of our events, all the things that we do. Usually when we get old stuff on there, I post it on our Facebook site, and I do Marvel and DC Picks of the Week as well, because I read all the new stuff, so I put that out there as well for fans to kind of, just a little bit from my 30 years of experience of what's good and what's not, if they care to know that.
Yeah, and like I said, it's all linked up on GeekSpeakRadioshow.com to Facebook. Everything else is on there. So again, Alan, thanks a lot for coming on. You're welcome back anytime.
Great. Hey, guys, if you want me on, give me a call. I appreciate you helping us plug our fantastic museum.
Not a problem. Our pleasure. Okay, talk to you later, Alan.
All right.
Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.